Now at 5, local fire departments react to proposed OSHA regulations that could cost them thousands. Plus, how some Joplin residents are fighting to save Memorial Hall from a scheduled demolition. And Israel's prime minister announces changes to his country's plans in the war against Hamas.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
OSHA, the federal agency that sets and enforces standards for workplace conditions, is proposing a new standard titled Emergency Response. And this is KOAM News at 5. I'm Tanya Bach. Now, if issued, it would replace the existing fire brigades standard. OSHA wants to address a wider range of emergency responders and include standards to protect responders from a variety of occupational hazards, such as requiring no trucks to be more than 15 years old. But the proposal is drawing concerns from firefighters across the country. They say these regulations could prove to be detrimental, especially to smaller, rural, and volunteer departments.
The people that are out here doing the job understands that some of this stuff's not going to work. Okay? There's some fire departments can't write a check for $500,000 for a fire truck.
OSHA says they welcome and encourage public comments in response to the proposed rule. They have extended the window for comment until July 22nd. You can learn more on our website at koamnewsnow.com. Joplin City Council members voted to demolish Memorial Hall to build Memorial Park in its place. Now, since the council vote, some community members are upset the vote was not open to residents. Michael Landris is a member of the Facebook group Save the Joplin Memorial Hall. Most of the 500 members want to preserve Memorial Hall as a piece of Joplin history rather than replacing it with a park.
Big things like this should not be left up to a handful of individuals to decide. It should go to the public vote.
KOAM reached out to the city of Joplin but has yet to receive a response. Chief Meteorologist Doug Hetty joins us with a first look at weather.
Well, it's definitely turned out to be another hot day for us today. Temperatures again, mainly into lower, some areas mid-90s. Once you get out across southeastern Kansas, northeastern parts of Oklahoma, and in general, the heat's going to stay around over the next couple days. It's going to fluctuate just a little bit, but with the humidity, it makes it feel hotter than what it is. It feels like 96, Nevada 94, in Anderson 96, at Grand Lake 95, in Parsons. It's also been breezy. It's going to stay breezy or windy as we go through the overnight hours tonight, and then once again as we go into the daytime hours tomorrow. Some puffy cumulus clouds. Besides that, we look pretty good. It's going to be pretty quiet as we go through the evening hours, just hot and humid, dropping through the 80s into the 70s. We're going to look at some storm chances here in just a bit.
All right, thanks, Doug. Voters in Oklahoma head to the polls tomorrow to cast their ballots in the state's primary election. In Ottawa and Delaware counties, voters will decide the Republican candidate for state offices, including corporation officer and District 1 state senator. There are also some county office primaries in Delaware County and a tax question in the town of Bernice. Polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. In a sign of growing political tension in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded a decision-making group that was steering the war in Gaza, while the military announced a pause in the fighting. Nicole Skanga has the latest.
Trucks carrying humanitarian supplies entered southern Gaza Monday after Israel's military announced a daily tactical pause in the fighting to allow more aid to reach Palestinians in the war zone. But on the Israeli side of the border, many pallets of food and other supplies are waiting for delivery. An Israeli spokesman is calling on the UN to do more.
We've only seen around 25 additional trucks make their way into the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the war, and there is a serious need for additional number of trucks, and we have worked together with the UN to increase that. But unfortunately, the UN isn't doing enough right now.
A spokesperson for the UN Humanitarian Office said a breakdown in law and order was preventing workers from using the route. In another major development, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded his war cabinet. The influential decision-making group was assembled as a coalition of rivals to promote unity during the conflict. In central Gaza, the fighting goes on as Israeli forces pursue the remaining Hamas brigades in Rafah. But Palestinian officials say 9 civilians were killed overnight when a home was struck. The Biden administration says Hamas is stalling a deal to release the 120 remaining hostages in exchange for a ceasefire. Across Gaza, war-weary Palestinians marked the beginning of the Islamic holiday of Eid al-Adha, many praying at the ruins of a mosque destroyed in the fighting. Nicole Skanga, CBS News, Washington.
Well, near the border with Egypt, 8 Israeli soldiers were killed this weekend when their armored vehicle was struck by an explosion. Well, Maryland's governor today pardoned tens of thousands of people convicted of low-level marijuana charges. It's the largest blanket pardon in the country's history. In 2022, President Biden pardoned Americans convicted of simple marijuana possession under that federal law. But that only affected about 6,500 people. He also called on other governors to follow suit. Still ahead, a push by the nation's top doctor.
Do social media sites need a warning label for kids and teens? I'm Jared Hill with the new recommendation from the U.S. Surgeon General and why lawmakers and medical experts say this would just be the first step.
Plus, a new study shows how many parents are using melatonin to help their children get to sleep. Those stories next in Health Watch. Topping Health Watch, the U.S. Surgeon General is calling for warning labels on social media the same way we have them for alcohol and tobacco, alerting parents that using the platforms can be harmful for adolescents' mental health. The Surgeon General says it's no less urgent than dangers like automobile safety or foodborne illness. Jared Hill has more.
The skewed and often distorted environment of social media often does a disservice to many of those children.
U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy has long warned of the dangers of social media. Monday, in a New York Times op-ed, the nation's top doctor called for warning labels on social media platforms, linking their use to significant mental health harms for teens. Murthy wrote the labels would regularly remind parents and adolescents that social media has not been proved safe. In a public advisory issued last year, Murthy cited a study that found adolescents who use social media for more than 3 hours a day face double the risk of poor mental health outcomes, including depression and anxiety. Warning labels like those on alcohol and tobacco products would bump up the call to action.
I think it's helpful for kids and families to have a cue to discuss this.
Dr. Sarah Jerstad, Medical Director of Outpatient Mental Health Services at Children's Minnesota, explains in teenagers, the frontal lobe or decision-making part of the brain isn't fully developed yet, leaving young people vulnerable.
They really are going to focus on what feels like kind of the most compelling, most exciting, most interesting thing right in front of them. And sometimes that's going to have high risk to it that they're not able to fully evaluate the way an adult would.
While there are also benefits to social media, teenagers who spoke with us about this are keenly aware of the drawbacks.
Social media is like, it'll twist your mind into thinking that people are having like an awesome time because they're doing this and doing that. That also makes you feel like you're less than them.
Congress would have to pass legislation to create warning labels. Some lawmakers have voiced support, but say it's just the first step, and legal guardrails are needed to keep kids safe. Jared Hill, CBS News, New York.
There is a bipartisan measure still waiting in the wings that would enact certain guardrails. Well, a national poll finds 20% of parents are giving their child melatonin to help them fall asleep, and a third stay in the room until their child dozes off. University of Michigan researchers say these tactics may work now, but could increase sleep challenges in the long term. Well, the chances of a migraine increases with the temperature. A study from the University of Cincinnati finds for every 10 degrees hotter it gets, there's a 6% increase of any headache. However, researchers found the treatment, fremanezumab, offsets the heat association. And that's a look at today's Health News. A little later, we'll check out which Southeast Kansas town made the list of best small towns in the country to visit.
Plus the heat and humidity. Stick around this week. We're going to have those details coming up. Well, of course, another hot one for us today. Temperatures into low to mid 90s across the region. We have some puffy little cumulus clouds out there, which we're going to have as we go through the evening hours. But a nice shot of our indigo sky. Casino and resort, of course, Indigo is just outside of Seneca, Missouri. But through the evening, we look fine, hot, humid. We slide back through the 80s into the 70s. Eventually, we'll bottom out lower 70s later on tonight. But look at these temps, low to mid 90s. It's been breezy all day long, but it's definitely been a hot one across the region. Currently 87. Those southerly winds at about 10 to 15, but gusts kind of in that 20 to 25 mile per hour range. And now that we are back into the summer months, we talk about the dew points or the humidity quite a bit. Look at our dew points, near 70 across the board. So if you pull out our dew point tracker, that kind of makes us into that sticky to muggy range. And that's where we're going to sit as we go through the next several days. Plus, it's been breezy. Southerly winds kicking in at about 10 to 15 sustained. And then, of course, we've had gusts higher than that. And we're going to continue to get winds gusting near 30 throughout the overnight hours tonight. Near 30 again for us tomorrow. And then they will start to die down a little bit by the time we head into Wednesday afternoon. So your wind forecast, this is kind of a knock your trash can over situation that we're going to see over the next 24 hours. Cumulus clouds, not a big deal. There's been an isolated storm or two in central Missouri, but really any rain staying down in eastern parts of Arkansas. There's a little bit of tropical moisture down through Louisiana into the Gulf of Mexico, and this is going to kind of evect north and then start to affect this next storm system. That will give us some better chances for rain, but this isn't going to be until we go down the road toward the weekend. Until then, just kind of hit and miss little storms. Tonight's going to be fine, lower 70s by morning. As we go through the day, we'll have partly sunny skies once again. We're already going to be into the mid 80s by noon. Most of us will get up right around 90, so actually a smidge cooler than what we did see today. There could be an isolated shower once you get down toward Table Rock, but everybody else is going to stay dry. Tomorrow night looks fine. We back down lower 70s once again. Let's go into Wednesday. We get a few more clouds. You can see some spotty thunderstorms popping up in southeastern Kansas. We start to get a little bit of that tropical moisture in here and some hit and miss little storms Wednesday afternoon. They would be very short-lived, but some very heavy downpours within those small storms. But I would say 70% of us end up staying on the dry side as they push through. All right, day planner 85 by noon. High temp near 90, plus our heat indices are going to be up there once again. It's going to feel like it's into low to mid 90s across the region once again by tomorrow afternoon. So if you are going to be outside, make sure you drink plenty of fluids. 89 tomorrow, 88 on a Wednesday, 88 Thursday, 90s return, low to mid 90s. Some thunderstorms popping up, especially late Saturday into Sunday morning.
Okay, well, I'm liking these temperatures that are like just barely in the 80s.
Psychologically, it's better.
Yeah, it's going to feel the same, but
well,
mentally, it helps.
Yes, it does.
And even an evening in the 60s.
Yeah, not bad.
That's impressive. All right, thanks, Doug. Well, Southeast Kansas town is earning national recognition for its revitalization efforts. Every year, Smithsonian Magazine puts out its list of the best small towns to visit. This year, Humboldt, Kansas made the cut. With a population of just over 1,800, the magazine credits the organization A Bolder Humboldt with redeveloping the community as a hotspot for entrepreneurs and tourists.
The school district is really good here. So I do a swim team here in Humboldt, and it's really cool. So living in Humboldt, really good.
It's just a nice, peaceful town. Just everybody knows everybody, and whenever you don't know somebody, you just get to know them.
That's good advice. Well, you can find the full list on our website at KOAMnewsnow.com. Well, new reports show inflation is easing, but is your wallet feeling the benefits? Coming up, we'll hear how Americans feel about the state of the economy. Topping today's Consumer Watch, the IRS announced today it is closing a major tax loophole that could raise $50 billion over a decade. loophole is called basis shifting transactions. In them, complex business partnerships move money from one property to another to maximize tax deductions and minimize their tax liability. The IRS will now be on the lookout for these kinds of transactions that have no substantial business purpose other than to reap a tax benefit. Well, the stock market recently hit a record high. Corporate profits are rising again, and a report shows inflation is easing. So why do many Americans say they're not feeling it? Mark Strassman explains.
Sure, inflation's cooling, but it still makes millions of Americans hot.
Everything is so much higher than it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Compared to 1 year ago, consumer prices were up 3.3% last month. Still too high for the Federal Reserve and its 2% goal. The Fed left its benchmark interest rate intact last week. The Fed says one interest rate cut is likely by the end of the year, although the timing is unclear. That means borrowers may get little relief before November's presidential elections. Voters are feeling frustrations inflated with the economy.
I'm making more money now, but I'm more broke now than I was in 2020.
In our latest CBS News poll, 72% of Americans say higher prices have been a hardship or difficult. 63% rate the economy as fairly bad or very bad.
Eggs, milk, bread, everything's really high, so that is a big ticket issue.
She's right. Food prices, up 1% over the last year, have surged about 20% since 2021. Wages are up, outpacing inflation, and wealthier families feeling flush keep spending. But the less you make, the more you feel it.
I just noticed the increase in price on everything.
Fed Chairman Powell hears the complaints.
Inflation has come down really significantly, and we're doing everything we can. We're confident that we'll get there.
Not soon enough for everyone with inflation fatigue. Mark Strassman, CBS News, Atlanta.
Nationwide insurance is dropping pet insurance policies for roughly 100,000 animals. The company blames higher veterinary costs and other factors. The move puts tens of thousands of pet owners in a tough spot because a lot of the animals losing coverage are older and have pre-existing conditions. That means they may not be insurable elsewhere. Nationwide said it did not cancel policies because of pets' ages or claims histories. The final check of the forecast is next. Up next on the CBS Evening News, the changes coming to school buses to improve safety. And then on KOAM News at 6, we'll hear more from area fire departments about concerns over proposed OSHA regulations. Plus, with temperatures staying high, we'll have tips to prevent heat-related illness. And we learn which Pitt State track and field standouts are competing to earn a spot on Team USA for the Olympics. Stay with us for the CBS Evening News and then KOAM News at 6. While there are both good and bad flyers in every state, some areas may have more inconsiderate airline passengers than others, at least according to a new survey by gaming company Solitaire Bliss. It found Iowa has the worst travel etiquette, followed by Illinois, Virginia, Texas, and Georgia. And meanwhile, Arkansas led the pack with the most considerate travelers, followed by Wisconsin, Florida, Ohio, and Kansas. I don't know if you fly in and out of Joplin, you go to Chicago a lot, so we're in that bad category.
So easy, and the parking's free, which is always kind of cool.
That is nice. It's a big, and you don't have to drive very far to get to it.
That's very true. I'm about 3 minutes, so that works for me.
Nice.
All right, hot, humid once again. Sticking around for us tonight. Upper 80s to near 90 over the next few days. A few isolated storms, mainly on Wednesday.
Thanks for joining us. The CBS Evening News is next. Of course, we'll be right back here for KOAM News at 6, and we'll see you then. Have a great evening and an even better tomorrow.